In the following tutorial, we're going to take a look at some of the basic 3D tools in Photoshop CS5. Now, you can use Photoshop CS4 since many of the exact same tools exist. So let's get started. I'm going to begin by creating a new document and just making it 500 pixels by 500 pixels tall. 500 pixels wide by 500 pixels tall. And I'm also going to give it just a little bit of a diffuse color. And that is just some sort of background color that is not white or black. And the other thing I'm going to do is paint an up arrow. This way I know that that way is up for this particular plane. Now, in order to turn this object into a very, very simple 3D object, we can go to the 3D menu and choose New 3D Postcard from Layer. This will create a 3D object of it. Now on screen you might not see that change, but if you look over on the right you'll see the background layer has textures and diffuse and background underneath it. So we actually have made a 3D object. In order to tell it's 3D, we need to go to the window menu and bring up the 3D extension, or the 3D panel rather, and start playing with it. The very first tools that we're going to use are the 3D Object Rotate tools. Now you'll find some of these basic tools are actually on the left as well, and when you select a tool you'll see the options above. So the very first one is to actually rotate the object. Then we can rotate it with the view. We can move it up and down, left and right, which is translate. We can translate it backwards or forwards. This is actually moving it in Z space. Or we can actually scale the object as well. Now scaling and moving it in Z space are a little bit different, and the nuances will be seen as you work with these tools more often. The next thing we can look at are the camera views, and this allows us to rotate our camera around. And if we had objects that we could see such as lights, we'd be able to tell the difference here. The next one is 3D Mesh Rotate tool. Right now, since we only have one 3D mesh in here, it only affects that particular one. The other one here is the 3D Light Rotate, 3D Pan and Slide, and we'll have to work with lights later. And the last thing is 3D Material Drop and Material Select tool. So we're going to go back to our regular Rotate tool. This is our 3D Object Rotate tool. And you'll notice that we also have this widget here, where the widget allows us to scale it, to rotate it, and to move it as well, or translate. If I can go back to the translate, there we go. And you can see the direction that we're going to translate it in. Now the material here you can see is going straight up, so that's pretty good. And we're going to look a couple different things that we can do with this material here in a little bit. But I just want to take you through some of the other options here. Right now you'll see that we're showing the scene, the current scene, and we can see this background mesh that's here. The next one over is the ability to see the other meshes that are in here, and we can choose whether or not a mesh can cast a shadow or receive shadows, or I can even make it invisible, and I can change the opacity of its shadow, which we'll see here in a second. The other one here, this next one over, is dealing with materials that we currently have selected, and we're going to have to experiment with that later. And the last one is our lights, and this we will also have to experiment with at a later time. So if we go back, you'll see on our main scene window we have the ability to change some things about rendering. We can change to a bounding box, or to a depth matte, or to a line illustration, paint mask, shaded vertices possibly. Or if we go back to default, we can click on edit and we can change different things about this, such as whether or not we're going to have a shaded view, and see our lines and see our points, and do anything else here. We can even do stereoscopic rendering, which is really quite cool. But you can see that we can add different things, and that will create a custom render setting, and then we could go ahead and save that for later. I'm going to not make any changes, but we're going to go on to the next tutorial where we'll deal a little bit with this next thing down here, which is paint.